Welcome everybody, it's Phil Jones here. I am seeking, like a lot of people involved in training, to work out how best to do what I do in the middle of this pandemic and this difficult time. How to take what I do in a classroom based environment and to try to make it accessible and available to people on their computers. I toyed with the idea of doing long videos. And I decided what I would do is a series of small videos. Now these kind of link together, so you could see them as a group of videos, or you could link them with individual videos. I might make reference to that as we go through, or you could just watch one and see what happens, see what is useful to you. The thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is the idea of above and below the waterline as a notion to help managers think about how to manage performance, manage behaviour, manage competence. And this is a really deceptively simple idea, which when it was shared with me and when I've shared it with others, people have found it to be really useful. What do we do at this time? What do we do with the challenges that are in front of us? For example, what about the stuff that we had that we were worried about before these restrictions happened, before the pandemic? Your staff might be still working at home. They may well be, working from the office. You may be estranged from them in some way, but it's different. Their clients might be not as accessible. There's lots of stuff going on. So what about the people that we worried about before? There's always going to be, I guess, often going to be a small percentage of people who we have concerns about. Maybe even these people are subject to formal disciplinary capability action. What about those people? What about the things that you've noticed since the restrictions happened, since the lockdown happened, that have made you go, ooh, I'm not sure about that? What about when we're under pressure from our managers to take action, or whether or not we believe that's true, or whether or not we feel that's true? We're worried about it. What about those little niggles that wake you up in the middle of the night perhaps and think, was that right? So how do we use this idea of above and below the waterline to help with that? Well, this is a ridiculously and, as I said, deceptively kind of simple idea, and this is a sort of slightly crude, I suppose, picture of a boat. There it is, bobbing on the water, sort of child's boat, if you like. Now what you can see is that there's the boat is bobbing along, and quite a lot of the boat is outside. The water's above the water, we can see it, and there's, as we know it's there, there's a lot of the boat underneath the water. So here's a question for you. I don't know, you see some behaviour or something happens or something doesn't happen with your staff that make you think, ooh, should I take action on that? I don't know, maybe somebody speaks roughly to somebody else. Maybe somebody's recording's a little bit slow. Maybe you're concerned that when you ring people a couple of times in the day that they're not there. Yeah? What if we take action for everything that we notice that we're not very keen on, or something that causes us worry? We're going to be doing it all the time. And I suppose we might find ourselves using a lot of our time and our energy to chase up these things. And I suppose we might even get a reputation for what we might be termed as micromanagement. So what do we decide? Well, the idea with this above and below the waterline is we ask ourselves, is that behaviour, is it above and below? Let's look at some pictorial example. So there we have a damage to the boat. It doesn't look, the boat doesn't look as pretty, but is it going to sink the boat in that position? Well, probably not. It's way above the waterline. Here we go again. Not very pretty. We don't like this. We don't want this on our boat, to see damage in that way. But it's above the waterline. Here we have another one, and this is again above the water. It's a bit closer to the waterline, so it might cause us a bit more worry. But the question we ask ourselves is, does this sink our ship? Does it sink our ship? And the answer is probably no. But hold on, what about this? We ask ourselves a question: does that behaviour, does that failure to meet some form of performance or competence requirement, does that sink our ship? And I think what we're saying here is it probably does. Now, what do I mean by sink our ship? Well, is it illegal? Does it cause harm to one of our stakeholders or one of our service users, or to another colleague? Does it cause harm? Does it cause serious impact on the reputation of the organisation? Well, that's an under the waterline stuff. That's when you have to act. So the question of above and below the waterline may just help us to think, is this going to sink the ship? And here's another one here, a really awkward one here, because it's obviously below the waterline sometimes and above it others. For me, that's going to sink your ship. Water's going to get in and it's going to sink. It's going to have a serious impact. So what we're doing is, what is the behaviour that we observed, and does that behaviour causes significant damage to the ship? Is it going to sink the ship? I mean, let's ask ourselves that question. And I'm going to ask you just to do some reflecting on that, and think about what's happened to you this week and the behaviour you've seen from staff which maybe wasn't quite meet the standards that you would hope for. Is it above and below the waterline? So there's something about what we need to, one of the things that I'll talk about in one of the other videos is non-violent communication and how we use that to have difficult conversations with staff. One of the central parts of non-violent communication is observations rather than evaluations. So when we say, maybe we see somebody's behaviour and we think that was not appropriate, or that was not to standards, or that was not adequate. Okay, let's think really what we have seen and what we have heard. And also the next bullet point is understand what you need for the situation. I don't know if a member of staff uses a mild swear word in the company of one of the stakeholders or somebody from another organisation. We might think, well, what did we hear? We heard the word. What is the word exactly? Does it sink the ship? That word. Does that expression sink the ship? No, it's not very nice, but it doesn't sink the ship. Okay, so what do you need from that situation? And maybe you'd end up thinking about, what do you need from staff in the way in which they conduct themselves and speak in other partners? Now, again, we look at that in terms of non-violent communication. So worthwhile checking that video out in conjunction with this one. I think there's something about, even if you've got a mark there above the waterline, that's not going to sink the ship. I'd make a note of that. I'd make a little file note of that. Again, you make a file note of the observation. We don't say that person A was inappropriate on this day with this person. We say what they said, and we might share that with somebody else. And on that day, you said this. That doesn't mean to say that it's below the waterline, but it's maybe a good bit of information for them. We make a note, even if they aren't below the waterline. Why not? Why not? And something else here I want to say, because if we are noticing, observing our staff, a great way to change behaviour or to communicate what's important to us as managers, as leaders, is that when we notice our staff doing what we want them to do, then we reward them. When you were with that person, I just noticed the level of courtesy that you expressed by them, by the way in which you held the door on them, the way in which you helped them with their coat, or whatever it is that you saw which led to an evaluation of courtesy. Do that with somebody. Tell them what you noticed that you valued. It's just a tremendous bit of information, and you can tell them how good it was for you, and thank them for it if you like. Find out what people are doing, what you want them to do, and reward them. So there we are. There's a little bit of a very short video on above and below the waterline, and I hope that's useful. I'll check out some of the other videos. They link. Some of them link more strongly to this. Certainly the non-violent communication one does. I hope you'll find that super useful, and please get in touch if there's any questions or comments you want to make. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks.